Toscanini is on your walls twice, Jan, but so too is another gentleman, Pablo Casals.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There he is, at once. And if we get the camera up there, we find him up there. Again, if I'm repetitious, I mean to be. He was a wonderful, marvelous man, besides being a great artist. And I recall many things and many experiences. He too, we went to southern France, to Prague, doing a Bach festival. I went there with the Bach Aria group. And he of course played, and we had, our group played, and we had Yehudi Menuhin was there. And he would sit in the wings of this beautiful church on a soft chair to listen to us. And as we came off, he would stand up and greet us all, and individually kiss every one of us on the cheek and thank you for the beautiful performance. Well, that's sweet of a man to do that.
Well, here we are in the study, surrounded by photographs of conductors with whom you've sung great operatic roles and in concert the world over. Yet there's a large American public that identifies you not only with that repertory, but with a completely different kind of repertory. For example, the song Granada.
It's very true. Let me sing it for you.
Oh, I'd love that.
Tierra soñada por mí, mi cantar se vuelve gitano cuando es para ti. Mi cantar hecho de fantasía, mi cantar, gloria me quería, que yo te vengo a dar. Granada, tierra ensangrentada en tardes de toros, mujer que conserva el embrujo de los otros amores, de sueño rebelde gitana cubierta de flores, y beso tu boca de grana, jugosa manzana que me habla de amores. Granada, marola cantada, coplas preciosas. No tengo otra cosa que darte que ramo de rosa. De rosas de suave fragancia que le tiene marco a la Virgen morena. Granada, tu tierra es reina de lindas mujeres, de sangre, de suor. The dawn in the sky greets the day with a sigh for Granada. For she can remember the splendor that once was Granada. For soon it will welcome the stars while 1,000 guitars play a soft habanera. Granada, mujeres de sangre de suor.
You know, in my travels, as you know, I went to Russia, and I was there twice, and there you find mention, especially amongst the artists. I sang with Lisztian. I did Traviata with him, and he is the Liebling. He is the man of Russia.
Pavel Lisitsian, the baritone.
And loved by everybody. And Petrov, the baritone I did Rigoletto with, also very popular. And they just came and they accepted me and gave of themselves to make me feel at home, and I must say they were wonderful. And in my travels, I've been to Israel many times. There's a picture here of Golda Meir. And the first Friday night Sabbath meal that we had was at Golda Meir's house. She had invited us. I think that was in 1950. Isn't that right, Alice?
It was, Jan.
You remember, she served us this wonderful meal. And
a real Shabbos meal. I remember gefilte fish and chicken soup with noodles and a kugel and a tzimmus. You remember the tzimmus for a long time. Yes. And it was just a beautiful evening. How could we ever forget her?
And it's left a permanent memory with us.
Absolutely. And it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship until she passed away.
And of course, she was one of the mention we were talking about.
Yes. It was shortly after that that Golda Meir became the ambassador from Israel to the Soviet Union.
Right.
And in 1956, Jan, you were the first American singer to appear in the Soviet Union as part of the cultural exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union.
Oh, yes.
What do you remember of that?
Well, many things happened outside of the fact that my appearances were successful. I'll try to be as humble as a tenor can be, but I've got to tell you that they were successful. Nevertheless, my contact that I made with my people was very important to me. Making success on the stage of the Tchaikovsky Hall or the Conservatory Hall, that was one thing. But finding what my fellow Jews were doing in Russia. So I went to the synagogue. And one night I was there, it was quite empty, and in fact, I was disappointed in the fact I thought that there'd be more people there. Nevertheless, they asked me to make the Kiddush, the sanctification of the wine. And I said yes, and there I stood singing for an empty synagogue, just barely 12 or 15 people, and pouring my heart out and feeling the emptiness of the moment. Nevertheless, those who were there enjoyed it, and first the Rabbi Schleifer, and they asked me, would I come back someday and worship with them? And I said yes. I was leaving the following day, Saturday night, and I said, I'll be back probably in 2 weeks. When I returned in 2 weeks, and we prepared to go to the synagogue that morning, Saturday morning, I came downstairs, and the sexton of the synagogue was awaiting. And I said, why are you waiting for me? He says, the synagogue is full, and they're expecting you there. I said, me? I said, I didn't tell them I'm going to be in the synagogue. I said I was going to come back to Moscow, but I didn't. Nevertheless, he said, nevertheless, they're waiting for you. So I came to the synagogue, and sure enough, the place was jammed, and people were outside who couldn't get in. And they made room for Alice and myself and my accompanist to go into the side door, and when we came in, it was the most thrilling thing to see that synagogue that 2 weeks before was empty, was full, and a lot of excitement. And
when you say full, how many people did it hold?
that accommodates about 1,900 people.
Oh, my.
And at one time, it must have been a gorgeous synagogue. But of course, it was sadly neglected, shall we say, and deteriorated. And the excitement was that so many more people were outside who couldn't get in than those who were inside. And when I came up near the pulpit, the Israeli representative was there, Avidor. And he greeted me, and he said, you know, these people are waiting for you to help them worship and lead the service. I said, I never said I would do it. He said, I'm not asking you whether you said you would do it or not. They are waiting for you. So I put on my praying shawl and the yarmulke, and I went to the Ahmed, and I began to sing. And it was a very sad moment for me. Yet it was one that made me happy that I could be with my people and help make them forget some of the trouble that they may have been suffering.
Both your families derive from Russia. I'm wondering if either one of you or both of you found relatives when you were there.
Jan didn't.
I
did you?
didn't.
But I did.
Alice did.
Yes?
Yes.
But how did you establish contact with them
Well,
in '56?
Very interestingly, we had a cousin here who was an engineer. He was one of the 5 engineers that helped build the Russian railway system. And he escaped from there for one reason or another, and he went to Japan. From Japan, he got to Israel and came then to the United States. In the United States, he wrote to his family under a fictitious name, but he would write all kinds of news, and he told them that I was married to singer Jan Peerce. Now, when I had to arrive there with Jan, he sent mail so that they came to greet us. And as I was walking in, I heard somebody say, Ellis. Now, there were only 2 people in the world that called me Ellis. That was my mother and my father-in-law, Oliver Shalom. And I thought perhaps I was hearing things. And I kept walking. And then I heard, Ellis. I became so terrified, and I turned around, and there I saw somebody that looked like my mother, except that she had long hair. As I walked towards her, she raised her hand, and she went this way and backed off and disappeared into the crowd. I could tell you I was slightly hysterical. When I went in backstage, Jan said to me, something happened. I was literally white. And I said, nothing. He had to sing. What was I going to do? He says, you better tell me, because I'll be more upset by your not telling me than if you do. But the ending of it is that they came to the synagogue, and she took me around. We fell on each other, needless to tell you. And somebody came over to me and said, please, Mrs. Peerce, don't be too emotional. Don't show too much. Even here, the walls have ears. You will be interested in seeing these pictures. People are not encouraged to go actually backstage as we would in the United States. So they wait on the street to greet the artist. And there's a picture here of Jan greeting them outside the concert hall. And then we have one very full one. I think this was the concert hall.
Yeah.
Where they were full of.
And when you get closer, you find there's a young American handsome tenor standing there singing.
Wonder who that was.
I have a vague recollection.
Yes.
Right?
Let's see.
And this is one of the conductors.
One of the conductors.
Yes. And here we are in front of we went to the Kremlin, if you recall.
Yeah.
Of course, Jan and Warner Bass.
And your daughter Susan.
And our daughter Susan, and myself, and Madame Lafarge.
Madame Lafarge, A Tale of Two Cities. Who was Madame Lafarge?
Madame Lafarge was
our guide.
Our guide and interpreter who never left us. Here we have a picture of Jan as Ricardo in Ballo.
Ballo in Moscow.
Yes.
It was Pablo that you sang at the Bolshoi.
No. Traviata at the Bolshoi, Rigoletto in Leningrad, and Kiev. We did the Ballo.
Ballo, yes. And then we have Jan in the midst of amongst, I should say, all the cast. Yes,
in
yes.
Ballo.
And here he is again with the Ballo cast. And let's see. Oh, here. Here he is kissing his lady's hand. His leading lady, that is.
I majored in it.
It was very good.
Jan, there were years as well when you made films in Hollywood.
Well, I did one thing of Carnegie Hall, which is still being shown all over Europe.
On the Late Show.
On the Late Show, but
Yes.
also all over Europe.
In motion picture houses?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And people still write to me and still tell me, and that was a great thing. You had some great names in that. I think Lily Pons and Rubinstein and Piatigorsky, I think. And
yes.
You mentioned them, they were all there.
The New York Philharmonic.
Bruno Walter,
sure. Arthur Rodzinski.
Rodzinski, that's right.
Yes.
Oh, it was a great thing. It wasn't a great film per se, story-wise, but it was a great musical film, which is really a collector's item to see how they all were when they were young and how they sounded in those days, and some of us who are still functioning, how we still sound, hopefully well.
Let me ask you this. Were any of the sequences actually filmed in Carnegie Hall, or did they build a Carnegie Hall on the back lot?
No, this was Carnegie Hall.
It was in the hall itself?
Yeah. In fact, the number that I did was in the studio you called it was a lesson. I was a teacher.